Sambonani. Njani. Good evening. Hello. Hola. Bonjour. Okay. So, like every other South African that stood up here on the stage, and including, I'll consider you a South African now. I'm going to be using a concept of telling you about a young man's life who basically grew up in this very city of Pietermaritzburg. I'm also going to ask you to raise your hand when you relate to things in the story personally, okay? So a good example, I'll just start and test you guys. Who of you have got a heart? Okay, some didn't lift their hands, so I'm concerned. Okay, so well done. Now, my talk this evening is also based on the topic of immigration. However, I'm going to be focusing on three main elements that I consider make up a human being. And this would be one's body, which is the physical parts that we see, and they help us do things, they're practical. Our mind, so what makes us do the things that we do, and decide upon decisions that we make within our journey or our life as we're here on earth. And the last one is your soul. So what is the core foundation of your being to the reason why your mind and your body does or acts and does the things that you end up doing? Now the story starts back in the year 1987. If you look at those numbers going the other way, it's 987. But in October, in this very city, where a young man was born in a community, born to a community which is Woodlands. I don't see any hands here, so there's no one from Woodlands. And with that, he grew up basically with the first 3 years of his life under the watch of his grandparents without his parents there. And if you think about this, at the same time here in South Africa, and in Africa at large, a lot of liberation stories were coming with different countries. We are looking at passing colonial systems throughout the continent. And so when I'm speaking to you as well with my story, think about Africa at large and not only South Africa. In 1990, this young man's 3 years old. His parents found work in Johannesburg. As many other people in South Africa, Johannesburg being the economic hub and place that attracts many other young people to work there. By 1994, which was a big turning point for South Africa, but also for the region, as many people looked at South Africa at that time as a huge, good story to tell on transformation and inclusivity, not only around race groups, but also religious groups as well. And what I want you to think about is how there was a lot of politics around it, but also personally, many people's lives correlated with the exact same feelings and emotions and decisions that were happening. Many people needed to be forcefully or projected or included in their systems, so people began to integrate through different schooling systems, urban areas, rural areas. I'm going to pause the story here and ask, how many of you have ever lived in a place that you weren't born in? Okay, so you know that feeling of it's a difference, you're learning stuff. At the same time, which you've heard from previous speakers here, you feel insecure because you want to be accepted, you want to be acknowledged, and you want to be part of that same system. Back to the young man. He's 6 years old, and he spends his first year of schooling right here in Maritzburg, and his granddad passes away. His grandfather at the time, remember, he looks at him as a father figure because his parents are living in. Great. And in the next year, because of the changes and the financial stability, and his grand can't really look after him alone, he ends up moving to an unknown space in Johannesburg with these two new adults and two new people that he has to look at as a mom and dad when he's used to his grandparents as a mom and dad. And alone that brings in a whole different aspect because he's very used to what his grandparents taught him, the way they do things, and he had to change into the system. Also in Johannesburg, what language do you think is mainly spoken there? Okay? So, and I'm sure it will be testament to Heidi's stats, it's Afrikaans. Yes? So, Afrikaans, and so a 6-year-old, and if you think about people as we grow up, when we're young kids, and I want you to all do this now, close your eyes and think back to when you were a kid. What, can you picture yourself back then and realizing, what did you enjoy and what didn't you enjoy? Did you know the difference between good and bad? Did you know the difference between black and white? Did you know the difference between Christian and Muslim? Did you know the difference between wrong and right? Okay? You can open your eyes. And that is how this young man got transformed. And we'll fast track to the end of primary school, was an average student, went on to high school, but then his parents got divorced due to the infidelity of his father. And there were 2 children out of marriage, and these children also happened to be from a foreign person, from Swaziland. So here comes the adapting of, and I know already in your minds because I've said the area that this person was born in, the city they're from, so you already have a perception of, in your mind, how this person looks. And here they have to now learn to adapt to this new role that they're playing. And because their mom suffered from schizophrenia, with the divorce case, they had to stay with their father. So they were forced to adapt to the new family system with a person who's not his mother, has to adapt to 2 new sisters, one being 3 and the other being 1, and learning another new language as well within this household, and culture again, and adapt to those changes. After that, his father gets very ill. And in 2003, if all of us were here in South Africa, that was the height of the HIV epidemic. And there was a lot of stigma and discrimination around it. And in your minds, I'm hoping that parallel, you're flowing with the life of this young man and the life of our country and the life of our continent. In the 90s, Uganda, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Swaziland and Lesotho had the highest rates of HIV. Out of those countries today, Uganda has totally turned that around and have a prevalence rate of a mere 4%. Well, us here in South Africa haven't really had much change. with everything that we have and the resources that we have. Give me 1 second, I need water. Thank you. Now, on this beautiful, vast continent of ours, there's 1.2 billion people. Richest in resources, which we've all heard this rhetoric, but it seems that we can't overcome channeling those resources to overcome such things as HIV, tuberculosis, malaria, or fighting different stigmas and discriminations. But back to the story. The young man's 15 years old, and his father passes on. But due to the stigma and discrimination, is not made aware of the reasons why. So of course, it's been covered up by pneumonia, and nobody keeps it, so all these opportunistic infections are to blame, and it's made seem normal, but then there's the gossip, there's the talk. Yet, this person needs to be resilient and continue on their path. And the story goes that was probably one of the biggest turning points in this young man's life. Like for many, and I don't see hands here, so I don't think many of us are affected or infected by HIV. But he had to decide to take on this baggage and make it a negative part, or channel it into a positive part. He also had to make a decision now. The lady who was his stepmom, they didn't really have a good relationship. So he had to decide between, does he return to Pietermaritzburg and survive with his mum who's on a social grant due to a mental illness and live really just getting through stuff and let go of the life of attending a Model C school and knowing the opportunities that he could be missing out on if he shuts that out. Amazingly, while that is going through, the mind and souls of those around this person save him without him even knowing at that time. His school offers him freeness to stay there. He's not a top performing person, not a sporty person, and says that, you know what, you can stay here and finish off your schooling. After school, he was forced to return back to where he came from in Mabadiliko. And in that very year that he returned, his mum passes away. And from that, there was also this guilt, from what I understand, on feeling as if I should have moved 3 years ago after his father passed away. Now I want us to compare that to South Africa. We heard about the euphoria and the Rainbow Nation in the early 90s. We're going through many divorces on our political landscape. And we're sort of trying to buff things and keep them together. And even on the African continent, if we look at the case that happened in Sandton with one of our leaders' first ladies, you know? And so there's these relationships, and they're so sensitive, and they do affect us, not only as individuals, but us as a community, as a society, as a country, and as a continent. And that young man is me. I know many of you are like, I knew it. I don't know why he took us on that journey. And I'm going to tell you the part after that, and the reason why I think I'm here today. I'm not a degree graduate, I'm not an honors graduate, I'm not a master's graduate. I don't have all these academic approvals, but yet I constantly find myself being chosen or selected to speak to people like yourselves on stages like this. And when I was given this opportunity by the team, I was really humbled, but also confused, because I was like, and I looked at the other people speaking, and I was like, this is way out of my league. But okay, if you think I should be here, I'll be here. And I also think, how am I going to use these two topics that were the one was very scientific, and the other I could sort of adapt. And I thought, you know what? I've had to immigrate so many times over and over again. And that's the story. And all of us sitting in this room have gone through those immigration processes. And I believe that the more challenging your immigration process is, the better you will come out, because you'll know the struggles that the most difficult and the most downtrodden and the most vulnerable and the most marginalized individuals go through, so that you can have empathy and you come in with a reference of understanding rather than, and I'll repeat what Joan said, like of misconceptions and judgments, and box everybody into saying all, I don't know which one to use because people might be offended, but let's say all gay people fit in this box. Why is this person not in that box? And it's confusing, yeah. I am a gay man, just to clarify. But I don't allow such things to define who I am. Because we each are individuals, and and I also believe that I'm so holistic and inclusive, and that's why I put in my brief that I want you to use an African counterintuitive lens. And if we look at counterintuition, those of us who drive, when you get to the Marion Hill Plaza on a very busy afternoon, which line do you go behind? The line with the trucks or the line with the cars? So the people with trucks are smart here, because actually that truck queue goes much quicker, because there's like 10 trucks that are equivalent to 20 to 30 cars. So it goes much quicker. So well done. And that's what I'm talking about. Start questioning how you, in your space and with your actions and your thoughts, react to the outside. So my question that I'm going to leave you with is, how are you immigrating other people into your space? Thank you.